Drones, are they just a fad? The UAS industry is exploding, from mining, mapping, and inspections to public safety. Drones are here to stay. But how do you get started? The first step is to get your Part 107 certificate from the FAA. Pilot Institute has trained over 55,000 remote pilots. We guarantee you'll pass the exam or get your money back. The course covers everything you'll need to know for the exam, with over 15 hours of videos, 5 hours of audio review, flashcards, unlimited practice exams, and interactive models. With over a 99% pass rate, you're in good hands, and we'll see you in the course.
Training. Here you go. Welcome to your FAA Commercial Remote Pilot Training. Here you're going to learn everything that you need to know, not only to pass the test, but also to become a proficient pilot. My name is Greg Verdio, and I am going to be your instructor for this course. And before we dive into all the details of the course, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about my background and why you should be paying attention to what I'm going to be teaching you. Training pilots is not only my passion, but it's also been pretty much my life. I spent my entire adult life in aviation flight training. In the last 20 plus years, I've managed large flight training programs in both Florida and then also in Arizona, where I live now. I taught as a university professor and also as the program chair at two of the largest aeronautical universities in the country. I also have a bachelor's degree in aeronautical science and a master's degree in aviation human factors, both of these from Florida Tech, formerly known as the Florida Institute of Technology, that's in Melbourne, Florida. Flight training is what I do, and quite frankly, I absolutely love it. I have a commercial pilot airplane certificate with single and multi-engine ratings. I also have an instrument rating, so I can fly in the clouds and with a whole bunch of different things. I also have a certified flight instructor certificate and a flight instructor instrument certificate. On top of that, I also have a Part 107 remote pilot certificate, and we have been teaching hundreds of thousands of drone pilots here at Pilot Institute. Now, aviation is fun, a ton of fun. It's a bug that once you catch it, it's kind of hard to get rid of it. And honestly, I don't know why you would want to. I'm going to be sharing some of the things that I have learned over the years, some mistakes, some wins, but all of them so that you can succeed in whatever it is that you plan on doing. I created this course because I not only wanted to help you pass the written exam, that's kind of one of the things that you're going to do, but I also wanted you to become a pilot who is proficient. You can go online, you can find plenty of courses that are going to help you just pass the test and get a minimum grade of 90%. I have zero interest in doing that. I'm going to be pretty open and direct on this philosophy because I don't believe it works. Our course is not a test prep course, it's a ground school, and there's a very important nuance in these two words. I wanted to create a course that helps you actually understand the concepts. As a student, I was never really good at memorizing things that I just didn't understand, and I know a lot of other folks work the same way. So I built the courses so that, they would help me if I were a student back in the days. A lot of these concepts in the course are very foundational. Okay, I'm giving you this foundation of knowledge. You're going to continue to use them and to build onto them throughout your entire flying career. The videos that you're about to watch are not version 1, quite frankly. They are not even version 2. We've been reviewing them, redesigning them over the years, improving them based on the feedback from you, from the students who came before you in this training. Now, we continuously monitor and we answer comments in the comment section below the videos that you leave so that we can make the videos better. We add more material, we find new ways of teaching. If I know anything about this job is it's never stagnant. I always find new methods of teaching new topics. Our courses are not make it and forget it, if you can understand that analogy. So with all of that being said, I hope that you really enjoy the course. In the next few lessons, we're going to be talking a lot of the actual content, what I'm going to be teaching you in the course. But yeah, this is my intro. I hope you really enjoy it. We'll see you in the course. Of course, it's the right one for you, but Before we talk about all the course details, let's go ahead and talk about who this course is actually for. And hopefully if you've purchased the course, it's the right one for you, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Well, if you're looking to fly your drone, your UAS, for non-recreational purposes, whether it's going to be to get paid or to help anybody out for free, then this is going to be the course for you. And the great thing here is that you don't need to have any prior aviation experience. I've helped hundreds of thousands of students, literally hundreds of thousands of students from all walks of life become successful, including some people from over 90 different countries. This is kind of impressive. Now let's go ahead and talk about who this course might not be for. If you're looking to pass the test with very minimal effort, this probably is not the course for you. And I'm okay with that, okay? We're going to go deep into some of the material here. And if you're already a pilot under Part 61, this is also probably not going to be a course for you. With that being said, if you haven't flown in a while and you're a private pilot or any pilot under Part 61, it's probably a good refresher, so you might want to stick around. But for pilots with a current flight review, you should complete the steps that are highlighted on the FAA certification page. You can actually become a remote pilot with an online test. And yes, this is only for Part 61 manned aircraft pilots who are current with a flight review. Now, I'm not going to hand you a bunch of tips to memorize all the questions. That's not how I operate, not how I teach at all. My goal here is to give you all the knowledge that you need so that you can answer any questions on the exam. And also so that you know what you're doing once you start flying. And that's really the most important. The test is only the beginning of your career. Everything else, I'm hoping to give you a good basis so that you can become an actual good pilot. I'm going to be sharing information from my years of flying manned aircraft, but also I'm going to share my experience as a commercial drone pilot. You will eventually see that the FAA focuses on some areas that maybe are less important for drone pilots. But the FAA also fails to cover certain areas that I think are important for drone pilots. So I'm going to give you a solid grasp of the overall aviation landscape and then how it fits into your training, into you operating into the airspace. Now, the FAA does recommend that you study for at least 20 hours before you take the test. The videos alone in this course will take up pretty much half of all that training. And then in the hours that you're going to spend studying the material, and then you're going to be doing some quizzes, you're going to hit that 20-hour mark by the time that you're done. So let's break down what we're going to be covering in the course. We're going to start with a fairly technical chapter, unfortunately, which is called Loading and Performance, where we're going to talk about aerodynamics of flying. And then we're going to go into regulation, which is one of the most important chapter, albeit not maybe the most exciting. But once you get past those two, things get a little bit easier with airport operation and radio communication, which is, I think, very interesting. And then we're going to dive pretty deep into airspace and charts, two of the most important chapters for two different reasons. They're going to make up a bulk of what you need to know for the test, but also they're super important because when you start flying as a remote pilot, you need to know what airspace you're going to be flying in and how to find the information. Next, we're going to cover weather theory and then all the associated weather services. If you don't know what that means, we'll get to it. And then we'll talk about ADM, that's aeronautical decision making, and then the physiological factors that are related to flying in general. And then finally, we're going to wrap up everything with maintenance and inspection. And at the end of all that, I'm going to give you some tips on how to make the test a little bit easier, what to expect from the test, and then how to apply for your remote pilot certificate. As you can see, it's already a ton of information to cover. Take your time with it. The videos are pretty short by design. We try to keep it to one topic, but you can easily go back if you need to, brush up on some sort of specific information. I also included a whole bunch of practice exams and quizzes so that you can figure out and test your knowledge throughout the course. You'll have plenty of chances to do that, so stay with me. In the next video, I'm going to go ahead and talk about all of the material that you need to download, that you're going to be using to help you along the way, along watching the videos that are here. Let's talk about study material. We're going to be using several FAA publications throughout the entire course. These documents are available easily from the document section. You're going to click over there on the sidebar. There you can either view the document, but you can also download it into your computer if you prefer to do that. Keep in mind, some of these are pretty large files and they may take a few minutes to download. So if you click on it and it doesn't really do anything, it could be just downloading. Just keep an eye on that. Also, a few of these documents are going to be specific to one chapter. So don't worry if you don't understand really what it means just yet. Just either download them, keep them in a folder, or we'll tell you again when you get to that folder which document to use. If you want paper copies, by the way, it is possible. Personally, I do have pretty much all of these available in paper format in my office. We're gonna have links below the video so that you can go and buy them, typically on Amazon. One word of warning here, do not trust the date that the publishers are adding to the top cover, somewhere on the cover, to make it look like it's the latest version for this year. Most of these documents don't really get updated more than every 4 to 6 years, if that. The FAA has a reference number. Specifically, the last letter of that reference number is what actually matters. That's going to tell you the latest version. So if you see something C, that's the fourth version actually. The first version doesn't have a letter and then they add a letter, A, B, C. So C would be the latest. So if I tell you to download the C, then you're going to be looking for that number when you buy. Even though it says, oh, this is the 2028 version, it may have been done in 2024. They're just trying to hook you up for buying what looks like the latest. In the course, at the beginning of each of the chapters, I'm going to let you know which section of the books you should be reading if you want additional information. Watching the videos should be enough to grasp all of the information, but from time to time you might be interested in either learning more, learning extra, and then finding an explanation that's worded differently. That's where you would find the information in the FAA publications. Also, in the first lecture or first lesson, if you want, of each chapter, we're going to be providing you with what we call lecture notes. And these lecture notes are optional. They're for the entire chapter. It's a PDF document that we designed to help you take notes while you're watching the videos. It has thumbnails of the most important information in the course, along with space on the side so you can take notes. You can print them to take notes. You can do it digitally if you want to. Whatever you prefer. Again, these are optionals, but if you like to write down, I personally do, it's going to be in there. Keep in mind, the thumbnail is small on purpose. We're not giving you something really big because we want to save on ink. And then also, it's just so that you can reference the video. It's not so you can skip the video. It's just referencing the important pieces we think in the video. All right, let me introduce some of the publications because, well, you are more than likely going to see them through either multiple courses or definitely multiple chapters. First up is the most important book. It's going to be kind of my and your primary reference. It's called The Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. We call it PHAK for short. This isn't a small book. Honestly, I would recommend getting the paper version for that one. If you're only going to get one paper one, get that one. That's what I've done for years now. The paper is great for quick reference, but also you can get the PDF. It's handy if you're doing some searching. It depends on what you prefer. But the PHAK is packed with great information. You'll get to know the book very well because, well, I reference it a lot in the course. It's actually where I've gotten most of my knowledge throughout my career. Now keep in mind, the FAA updates the document from time to time. When that happens, we're going to re-upload the new version to the course, so you should always have access. There's also a UAS specific document that is called the Remote Pilot's SUAS Study Guide. It's kind of a very, and I emphasize on very condensed version of the Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge that is geared towards drone knowledge only. Then we have the Aviation Weather Handbook. This book will be our main resource for all things weather related. Don't be too worried when you download this thing or if you buy it printed. It is massive, and I mean it, it's massive. It contains far more information that we're going to discuss in this course. I have to admit, some of that stuff even in there just goes over my head. It is very detailed. Then there is what we call the ACS, that's the Airman Certification Standard. This tells you and me what the FAA expects you to know for the exam. It lists all of the topics that you need to study, also all the topics that I need to teach, but it does not provide you with the content. That's kind of a key factor here. I've made sure that our courses cover everything that's in the ACS. After you take your exam, this is also the document that you'll need to reference in order to find out which topics you missed and on any questions that you missed on the exam. Next up are what we call advisory circulars. These are non-regulatory guidance, again, non-regulatory guidance that the FAA publishes in order to help pilots with understanding different bits of regulation, if you want. They're easy to spot because the reference number starts with AC, followed by 2 or 3 digits, a dash, and then another number. Like for example, AC 60-22. This concerns aeronautical decision making. Like I said, these advisory circulars are not regulatory documents, meaning that they're only published for informational purposes. But a lot of what is in them is great guidance that you should follow, even if it's not mandatory. And then let's not forget about the Federal Aviation Regulation, and then the Airman Information Manual. These, we call it the FAR-AM for short. The FAR-AM is typically a printed book that combines both publications. They're two different documents, but they're combined into one. I personally prefer to use the digital version. For regulation, it's going to be ecfr.gov. That's the website. And then for the AIM, there is a website. It's a very basic HTML website with text. That's what I would recommend that you get your information from. Now, I know this list can be a little bit overwhelming, but take your time with all of this material. It's crucial that you have them, that you understand kind of what they do, and they're definitely going to help you succeed in the course. Not just about watching videos, there is actually a little bit of strategy here. First up, I do want you to watch the videos. This is why we made them, okay? If you don't understand something in the videos, I recommend that you rewatch the topic. I expect people to get about 65% on the first pass, maybe a little bit less, and then as they watch more, they add to that percentage of what they understand. If you still don't understand after rewatching several times, then ask for help, okay? Ask a question down in the comment section, and then someone from our team is going to help you with an answer. Be as specific as you can, please. Help us help you. That's the best way I can describe it. You can also use the AI instructor that we have on the site. It's called Copilot. It can guide you through some of the stuff in the right direction. I know that some of you might be thinking, AI, blah, blah, blah. But we actually spend hours with this thing, training it specifically to help with aviation knowledge. It's not your off-the-shelf ChatGPT model. This is actually something that you can trust. It's been designed specifically for this application, and it works actually really well. If you need a private response, we can also help with that. You can shoot an email to contact@pilotinstitute.com. We're here to help you succeed, so make sure that you utilize all of these resources. And we've got some great study tools that are available for you as well. You have the lecture notes. I kind of mentioned those before. These are the PDF that are going to allow you to take notes while you're watching the videos. Print them, scribble on them, do whatever you want. I think they're a great tool. There's also a flashcard section with a lot of flashcards available. That's available in QuizBank, which is the quizzing platform. More on QuizBank in a second. Now, don't forget about the cheat sheet also. It covers all of the main points of the stuff that you need to know. Review it often, but remember, you cannot take this thing with you to the actual FAA exam. Another way that you make sure that you have a great experience is to take all of the quizzes and make sure that you get at least 90 out of 100 before you move on to the next section. But be careful here. I'm going to say that multiple times. Do not repeat the quizzes over and over again. I repeat, do not repeat the quizzes over and over again until you get a 90. If you get less than 90 on the quiz, figure out what topic you missed and then go back to the videos or to the material to study, maybe the books, and then go over it again. And then wait at least 12 hours before you take the quiz again. I just don't want you to memorize the questions in our database, which is easy to do if you repeat the exams all over again. Now, at the end of the course, there's going to be a final practice exam. That's where you're going to be able to replicate kind of the format of the actual FAA exam. Make sure you find a quiet spot, give yourself 2 hours-ish, and don't use any outside help because you're not going to have outside help on the day of the exam. It's going to show you how ready you are for the actual FAA exam. And like the quizzes, do not repeat that one until you get a passing grade. Again, do not repeat the practice exam until you get a passing grade. Wait at least 12 hours before each of the takes and study in between. I can tell you, I'm going to be serious here. I'm going to look you straight in the eyes. 90% of the people who fail the exam using this course fail because they did just that, just what I said. okay? They've repeated the final exam without studying in between. I've seen students do 10 practice exams in a row in one day, okay? Even if you do 3 or 4 in one day, it's too much. Even 2 of them in one day is too much, okay? They started with a score of like 50 and then they ended up with 90. And then they were like, well, I know my stuff. And then they thought that they were ready for the exam. Except they were not. They were just ready for our database of questions. And the questions on the FA exam are going to be different. The topics are going to be the same, but the questions are going to be different. That's why I'm teaching you the knowledge so you can answer any question. So they got a big surprise and then they realized that the exam had different questions and then they failed. And then they come back to us and say, well, I failed. And then we look back and we say, well, yeah, you did exactly what we said not to do. So please don't be that person. I hate it. I hate it when I get a failure from any sorts because it sucks. It sucks for you. It makes you look bad. It makes you feel dumb because you failed the exam, and it makes us feel bad because we don't like to see students fail. So if you got to follow anything in this course, just follow that. You'll do fine. Now I know what you might be thinking. I only need to get 70% to pass the real exam. Trust me, if you cannot hit 80% on the practice exams on 2 consecutive exams over 2 different days, then you are likely to fail the real exam. Remember how I said that 90% failed the exam because they memorized the database of questions? Well, the other almost 10% didn't do the 2 practice exams. So those 2 things, over practicing and then not doing 2 practice exams, if you do just those 2, watch the course, 100% of the course or 95% of the course to understand the material, you're golden. That's really all you have to do. Remember, the FAA test is pretty expensive, and there's a 2-week cooling period, waiting period, whatever you want to call it, if you don't pass the test on the first try. But here's the good news. Our pass rate is over 99.9% out of well over 100,000 students.
I know,
We've actually
right?
trained a quarter of all remote pilots in the United States for a good reason. So if you follow this guidance and you use all of the tools, you're going to do just fine. Finally, use all the tools that we provide along the way. Use the interactive modules. Use the scenario-based training at the end of the chapters when it's available. Use the VR training tool that we created. Watch the other videos that we have from the library section up there. Also, we typically have shorter YouTube videos on the channel that explain kind of some of the topics in a slightly different way because, well, they're condensed for social media format. And don't be afraid to read the study material that I'm going to give you. When appropriate, I'm going to provide you a list of resources that you can download and read at the beginning of each of the chapters. All of these resources are actually available for free on the FAA website. Now, with all of that being said, flying is a ton of fun. Ground knowledge is, well, unfortunately, one of the requirements that may not be as fun because, well, you're not flying in the air. But I'm going to do my best to keep it exciting and then also to give you as much knowledge as possible so you can be the best pilot that you can be. The Pilot Institute community. Now you're going to say, what the heck is this? Well, as a student, you get access to the Pilot Institute community. Now you're going to say, what the heck is this? Well, this is an optional feature, but I encourage you to actually participate as you will find a lot of resources and conversations that are very relevant to your training, whatever course you're in, actually. It's also where we post announcements and course updates and industry news and events that we are attending and many more things. So it's a good way to keep track of kind of what the company is doing and then also, how you can learn more things outside of what we teach in the course. Each week in there, we see thousands of students and alumni that engage in helpful conversations, valuable conversations as well. We have community guidelines and moderation, so it's actually is not like the Wild West like a Facebook group might be. So if you're worried about this kind of experience, it is not. It's way more organized and a much better experience overall. Now you can access that community directly from the course platform. You can click on community link that's at the top of the homepage, like somewhere up here. You can also access the community directly, separately from the upper bar. We're going to put a link down in the description here. There's an app that you can download, which is separate from the course app. I know, I apologize, it's 2 different apps, but it's 2 different platforms, unfortunately. So you can download that app and then go directly to the community. Again, keep in mind, different from the course app that we have. Now you can access the community from the course platform through the upper menu, like I mentioned, that's up here, but you cannot access the course platform through the community itself. So the community is kind of its own thing that's separate, but you can't go back to the course from there. If you find yourself in the community looking for your courses, well, make sure that you head over back to the course platform. That link is available on pilotinstitute.com. If you want to go to the course, pilotinstitute.com, and there's a login in the upper left corner of the page. Community that I just mentioned in the previous video. One of the biggest advantages of participating in the community that I just mentioned in a previous video is being able to access what we call the instructor office hours. These are hosted directly in the community, not in the course, and they're live calls that give you the opportunity to discuss your questions or topics or any further information that you need from our expert instructors. Also, in that community section, you're going to be able to go through what we call the Zero to Remote Pilots in 2 weeks. This is an optional program again, but you can earn your remote pilot certificate by just studying about 1 to 2 hours a day for 2 weeks and using the guidance that we give you in this program. Now you have two options to do this. You can download the PDF that's below the lesson and then follow along at your own pace. The second option to do this, if you need a little bit more guidance and a little bit more help to stay on track, is to enroll in the community. There's a course called 0 to 2 Week Challenge, and that's going to give you daily emails with everything that you need to study and to focus on that specific day with links to the course. You can also leverage using the Part 107 discussions that are in the community in order to interact with other students and even some alumni that come back and help answer questions. So if you want that added accountability, make sure that you check the link right here. We're going to put it so that you can go to the 0 to Remote Pilot in 2 Week program. Developed our own learning management platform, and then we also developed our own quizzing platform, which can go hand in hand these days. There you're going to be able to find all of your lessons, all of your courses, all of your progress, all in one place with one single sign-on. So the quizzes and the LMS are going to be all in one place with one password. Now to access this, it's very easy. You can go to the homepage on pilotinstitute.com, and in the top right corner, you're going to be able to see the login page. From there, you're going to put your credentials and be able to log in. And yes, before you ask, there is actually an app on either iOS or Android where you can watch the course on your iPad, on your iPhone, on your Android phone, or anything else that runs these operating system. And you'll be able to download the videos for offline viewing. So you'll be able to do that directly into the app by clicking the icon that is right here next to each of the lessons, and then be able to take that on the go. So once you get to the website, you are going to be able to see all of the classes. Now, to navigate to your classes, make sure that you click on this button right here. And the first thing you should do once you go in there is to update your profile, make sure that your name is correctly spelled out and that it shows the way that it is going to show in the course platform when you leave a comment. To do that, click here, and then you'll be able to update it. A quick note here, if you update your email address, it will also update the Circle email address, which is the one that is tied to the community. But if you update your photo right here, unfortunately, it will not update in Circle. Once you get into your course, you will be able to see all of the information, and it should be pretty straightforward. At the very top, this menu is showing all of the different courses that are in the track that you're currently enrolled in. Also, the courses that you might be interested in if you're following a specific certificate. On the right side is all of the lessons in the course divided into different chapters. There you can click at will, but we do recommend that you watch them in order. The video player itself is going to show you the video with a bunch of different options to have me talk faster or talk slower, depending on what you prefer, and then also to see subtitles, which we have available in multiple languages. You can make the video 3 different sizes: the regular size that you see when you first start, or a theater version that's a little bit wider, or finally you can go full screen. Underneath the videos, there's often going to be additional information, so make sure that you check that out as well, especially if you've been watching in full screen for a while. This additional content might be additional links that are mentioned in the video, and also you can find all of the comment section right here. This is where you would leave your question if you have one, or to interact with other people that are asking questions. And I know sometimes you might be a little bit frustrated because, well, you might not find the right information or it's not explained the way that you understand it, but please keep it professional in the comments. This is a place where everybody else is going to see what you're writing, and we will delete comments if they're not professional. Our instructors are always here to help you, so make sure that you give them as much information about what you don't understand or maybe an issue that you found, and we'll look into it. We also have a cool additional help called Copilot. This is where you'll be able to ask additional questions about a specific video, including creating your own flashcards, creating additional quiz questions, scenario-based training, or anything else really that you want to ask about aviation or this specific topic. Along the course, you will see that we have quizzes. These quizzes are designed to help you test your knowledge. They're not designed as a teaching tool, they're designed as an evaluation tool. So you're gonna make sure that you have watched the videos and understand the topic before you get to the quizzes. Now, these quizzes are hosted on our own platform. It's called QuizBank, which can also be accessed separately. So if you want to see all of your quiz results in one place, you can go to quizbank.ai. Your password is going to work there, the same password that you use to watch the courses, and then you'll be able to see the full list of all the courses that you've taken, all of the attempts, all of the questions that you've missed, and then all of the explanations to all of these questions. I recommend that you take the quizzes when they are prompted in the course, and that you go to QuizBank to go back and look at the history of all the quizzes that you've taken. Again, I'm going to mention one more time, but do not overtake quizzes. Do not take quizzes back to back to back, especially when you go on quizbank.ai. They're all going to be available right here. Don't take the quizzes before you've watched all of the lessons. One last very cool feature of QuizBank is the ability to look at your flashcards. To access the flashcards, you'll have to first go into the specific topic and then click on this button right here to access the flashcard themselves. This is important stuff, so make sure that you listen. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the FAA exam. This is important stuff, so make sure that you listen up. First thing you need to know, this exam has to be done in person at an approved FAA testing center. No exceptions. But don't worry, there's about 700 testing sites across the country, so you should be able to find one near you. Here's a key point. You do not need to have an instructor endorsement to take this test. It's different from other FAA certificates, so don't get thrown off if the test proctor asks you for an endorsement. You just say, no, we don't need one for this test. Just remind them that this is the remote pilot exam and it does not require one. They should have a little list. Sometimes they don't give a lot of remote pilot tests somehow, and they seem to forget, or somebody is brand new and they've never seen it. Now, about the exam itself, you're looking at 65 multiple choice questions with 3 options for each and only one answer being correct. There's 5 of these questions that are going to be thrown off. They actually won't count in your final grade, but you don't know which one they are. They're using those 5 questions as testing. They're trying to see if this is a topic they want to include in future versions that will count. So technically, only 60 questions total. You've got 2 hours to complete the exam, and you need to get at least 70% to pass. And of course, you're not going to have to worry about this because you're going to get 80% twice on the practice exam before you get to schedule your exam. So trust me on this one. On exam day, you're going to be glad that we had that extra buffer in testing. Note that while you cannot apply for the exam until you're 16, you can actually take the written exam as early as 14. And this is because the written exam is valid for 2 years, so if you take it at 14, you have to apply for the exam 2 years later at 16 to be ready to go. The exam is going to cover a range of topics from regulation to airspace to weather and operations and so on and so forth. And here are the different percentages that are going to be for each of the topics. Make sure that you pause on this right here so that you can get a better idea, but this is found in the Airman Certification Standard. When you go take the test, bring your government ID, a basic calculator, although they'll probably provide you with one if you need it, and maybe a non-electronic magnifying glass. What the heck is this? It's something that doesn't have a light in it. That's if you struggle with small prints. Now keep in mind that it has been reported that some testing centers do not allow magnifying glasses. I talked to the FAA about this because I was not happy actually. I think that's an overreach, but they did say that the proctor has the final authority about what you can and cannot bring with you to the test. A ruler can also be handy. Just make sure that it doesn't have any kind of handwriting or markings on it other than the graduation lines. Leave your notes at home, not allowed to bring them. Even our course cheat sheet, that's just, you can't bring that with you. No fancy calculators, although if you have an E6B or a CX3, it is acceptable to bring it. No dictionary, no recording devices at all. They will stop you. Not only are they going to stop the exam if they find that you're cheating or trying to cheat, but they will also ban you from taking exams ever again. So not a good thing to do, okay? They will also ask you to empty your pockets and leave any kind of bulky sweaters behind. I've seen that reported by students before you enter the testing room. So they'll have cubbies where you can put all of your stuff. Basically, go in with your hands in your pocket and your government ID and then your whatever else, just very little things with you. Yes, they are very strict with all of this. They just don't want people leaving with, writing down any of the questions and sharing them with other people. If you have a learning or reading disability, you can request specific accommodation. It is rare, but it is possible to get help with a word processing device or someone that's going to read the question to you. Keep in mind, they won't be able to help you with anything else. Typically, the proctors don't actually have aviation knowledge anyway, so it's not like they're going to be a good help. The exam itself is going to be on the computer. Note that more and more now, the you at the end, they're going to take that piece of paper and then put it in a shredder. But here's some reassurance. We've trained a few 100,000 people, and I'm not making this up, a few 100,000 people to take FAA exams. Out of all of those, less than 100 total of every possible courses that we have that teach for FAA exams have failed, less than 100. Our failure rate is right around 0.03%, not 3%, 0.03, 0.03%. In other words, you're in good hands, okay? Now you might be wondering what happened with the ones that don't make it, that actually fail. Well, about 90% of them either did one or more of the following. They didn't finish the course, and yes, that includes playing the videos without watching them. We know actually when you do that. They also possibly did not get the 80% mark on the practice exams, or they just took too many practice exams or quizzes, which is something that I mentioned before. If you take them in a row without studying in between, you're just memorizing the questions. And yes, if you do that, it will void the money back guarantee that we have. I like to think of this, of the money back program, as a good faith agreement that we have between you and I, that you are going to follow the guidance that I provide you, and that you will watch the course, and that you're going to put a good faith effort towards succeeding by yourself. Sir. The good news is, like I said, 99.9999% of people do a great job. If you don't finish the course, it's going to be hard for me to imagine that the responsibility for failure is on anyone but you, right? This is your time to shine and to do the work. If you take multiple exams in a row and you memorize the database of questions,
would I be in your way?
What I'm telling you to do. Responsibility for failing again will be on you. Now, I hope that this makes sense.
Okay, yeah, let me know and I'll vacate.
To be smart about it. If we do fail by providing you the instruction, then I will take the responsibility and we'll give you your money back. And most of everybody else that we talked to who failed self-reported that they were just not good at taking tests. And you know what? I can feel that. I was never a good test taker, especially with multiple choice questions. I always just overthought the question and the answer. And some people just have stage fright. The minute that they enter the testing center, they forget everything. If that's your case, take a breather, okay? You have 2.5, depending on the test that you're taking, hours to do all of this. In most cases, you're going to be out of there in less than 1 hour, okay? Because you've been trained, you've studied, you've done all this. Take your time, take a breather, go through all the questions that you know that are good. The ones that are not, bookmark them and then come back to them later. Every single question in there is worth 1 point. Okay? Every single question in there is worth 1 point. If it's a question that takes 15 minutes to answer, or if it's a question that takes 2 minutes to answer, same worth, same 1 point. So go through all this stuff, get 90% out of the way, and then go back to the ones that take longer. And if you mess those up, guess what? That's fine. You still have 90% of them that you're gonna get correct, okay? Think about it this way. So just don't overstress. After a while, you're gonna get warmed up, and then you'll get in the groove, and you'll do just fine, okay? Remember, we're here to help, and I mean this, okay? If you've got questions, don't hesitate to ask them. This stuff is important, and we want to make sure that you're well prepared for the exam, but also for real life.
Hey, what's up with it, bro? How you doing, man?
How's it going, man?
Good to see you, man.
See you.
get started with the first Well, let's get started with the first chapter. And the first chapter is loading and performance. Now, everything we're going to talk about in here can apply to two different types of drones. Now, drones, as you know, can be either a fixed wing drone, like an airplane looking drone, or it can be a rotorcraft, which can have like 4, 6, 8 different motors on it, and it's going to go vertical and then go sideways, which is some of the more popular drone these days. So everything I'm going to talk about can apply to both of those. In some cases, it's going to be specific to only one type of aircraft, which is going to be the fixed wing. So we're going to go over, I'll let you know when it is for one type or the other, and then we're going to go over and talk about loading and performance. The reading material, very important here. Where are we going to find information about this? The first one is going to be the PHAK, the Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. You'll see throughout this entire course, I'm going to be talking about the PHAK. This is the most important book where you're going to find all the information that you need. So we're going to find it in section 4, 4.5, 4.6 here. These are the page numbers, by the way. And then in section 5, there's all of these different sections here in section 5 where you'll find information about loading and performance. Also, if you have downloaded the study guide, you're going to find information in chapter 4. Finally, if you are looking at the ACS, the Airman Certification Standard, which is the basis for making sure that we cover every single topic that is required for the test, then we're going to find in section 4, loading and performance, there's all the different tasks in here talking about loading and performance. So let's go ahead. Let's take an overview of all the different things that we're going to talk about in this presentation. There's quite a few, not as much as some chapters, but I figured I would start with this one. It's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit easier to explain, so it gets you kind of warmed up for all the other chapters after this. The first thing we're going to talk about is the responsibility of the pilot in command, the RPIC, Remote Pilot in Command. Then we're going to talk about the forces of flight. Now, there's 4 forces of flight: lift, weight, thrust, and drag. And we're going to go over each of them for fixed wing and for quadcopters. And then we're going to talk about stalls, what happens when you stall the wing, not when you stall the engine. That's a completely different story. Then we're going to talk about load factor, stability, and the factors that are affecting your performance, the performance of your drone, which is part of the reason why we're going over all of this knowledge right here. When we're done with this, I'll go over some typical FAA questions so you have a better idea of what may be on the test. Now, as you know, I've said this before, but I don't teach for the test. I teach because these things are important for you to know. They may be on the test. If they are, we'll emphasize on them. And you'll see in the last section with the typical FAA questions, those are going to be questions that you will find in the test. In terms of the responsibilities of the pilot in command, they're pretty clear. You, as the pilot in command, are responsible to verify that the aircraft is loaded properly before the flight. What does that mean? It means that if you put a camera, for example, on your drone, if you put any additional kind of weight that was not initially on the drone, then we're going to have to make sure that it's going to be fitted correctly and that the drone has enough power to lift that additional equipment, and make sure that it's in the correct location so that it doesn't affect the weight and balance of the airplane. Speaking of weight and balance, we have to make sure that the weight is correct and the balance of the drone, meaning that where we put the object is not going to tip the drone forward or backward and prevent it from taking off. Everything that we talk in here must comply with the manufacturer's weight and balance specification or the restriction. Now, in some cases, when you have a smaller drone, you're going to have what we call a flight manual, which is an operator's manual. But when you start buying bigger drones, more commercial drones, then you will have more information available for that specific drone. How much weight can it lift, and where can you put the different objects so that they are within balance. So this is what we call the pilot's operating handbook or the UAS flight manual, depending on what the manufacturer calls it. rotation for an aircraft. And I'm going to do two things. Let's go ahead and talk about the axis of rotation for an aircraft. And I'm going to do two things. I'm going to talk about quadcopters in a minute, but first I want to talk about airplanes. I get a lot of comments from people saying, why are you talking about airplanes in this course? Well, I'm not. This is not my, this is not me wanting to talk about airplane, although I do like talking about airplanes. But the FAA has a requirement that you are aware of what aircraft, how airplanes fly, because down the line, you could be flying a fixed wing aircraft. And this is not a quadcopter license that you're getting. You're getting a small UAS license, and a small UAS can be a lot of different things. So please bear with me. Even if you don't fly a fixed wing at the moment, there will be questions on the test, almost 100% guaranteed, about airplanes. So you need to be aware of this. So let's talk about these axes of rotation, and they're the same. They're the same. We have three different movements from the UAS. Whether it's a fixed wing or a quad, we're going to have a roll, which is going to be controlled by our ailerons. We're going to have a pitch, okay? Roll is going to be going this way. We're going to have a pitch, which is going to be climbing or descending. And we're going to have a yaw, which is rotating around this axis. So to better understand this, let's take a look at an airplane right here. And when we look at an airplane, we have ailerons on each tip of the wing right here, and that controls the rotation, which is called a roll. And when one goes up, then the wing is going to drop and the other one goes down on the opposite side, and we're going to make a roll to the left. And same thing when we go to the right aileron goes up and the left aileron goes down, and we turn to the right. In terms of pitch, this is controlled by the elevator, and the elevator is this little thing right here that is going to move up and down. If the elevator moves up, then the pitch is going to be up. The aircraft is going to pitch up. In terms of the yaw is controlled by the rudder. And this is, again, this red part right here is our rudder. And if we're going to push the rudder on this side, then the airplane is going to yaw to the left. That's your yaw. You need to know these because I know there are questions on the exam about this. Even if you're never going to use this in the future, you still need to be aware of it because this is something that could come up on your exam. Let's take a look from the quadcopter section here. Your roll is going to be done by your aileron, and depending on how your controller is set up, if it's set up like most controllers, the aileron is going to be on the right stick. You go to the left, and the drone is going to roll to the left, and then to the right, and then you have this. In terms of the pitch is going to be controlled by the elevator, and this is your pitch right here. You're going to move forward or you're going to move back. And then lastly, we have our yaw, and this is the yaw, which is the rudder. It's going to be controlled with the left stick. Left stick to the left gets you a yaw to the left. Left stick to the right is going to get you a yaw to the right. In terms of climbing and descending, we're going to use our power, and the power is going to be right here, up, and the power down. Is going to apply to that airplane. So the first thing that we have, let's go ahead and talk about the four forces of flight. And first, let's start with a fixed wing aircraft. Now, this is an actual aircraft, but this could also be a model aircraft. The same exact thing is going to apply to that airplane. So the first thing that we have is the lift. And the lift is going to be located right here, as you can see. Now, the vector that I'm showing you right here is going to be just a representation of the overall lift created by the wing. As you can imagine, there's a lot of tiny little vectors all across the wing that is creating lift that will add up to one big vector, which is what we represent here. Now, opposite to the lift is going to be our weight. And the weight is going to be, well, you're familiar with it. It's the weight of an object. This little remote right here has a weight. If we talk about this airplane right here, it has a weight. Any object on Earth has a weight. And that weight is always going to be pointing towards the center of the Earth. And we'll talk about that in the next video. The weight opposes the lift. Then we have something called thrust. Thrust is what is created by our engine, in this case, by the propeller that's attached to the engine. And opposite to weight, because as we move through the air, we have drag. Drag is created every time that an object is moving through the air. It would be perfect if we could fly and not have any drag. In real life, we do, so we have to take that into account. So we're going to take a look at each of these forces right here, and then we're going to take a look at how they are created, why they are created, and why it's important that we understand these forces. In a rotorcraft, when you have, for example, a little Mavic, I'm using this example right here. This is what I'm going to be using as a prop, as a model. This is the Mavic 2. And the reason I'm using this is because it's nice and small and it will fit on the camera. This is considered a rotorcraft. This is a quadcopter. So it has 4 motors right here with propellers on it. And it looks a little different than the one that you have in the slides, but it's the same principle, the same idea. So on the rotorcraft, what we have is 4 forces as well. We have lift. Lift is going to be created by the motors of the rotorcraft. Then we have our weight, that's going to be opposite to the lift. And then as we start moving forward, then we're going to have thrust and opposite to it, because we're creating thrust because we're moving through the air. Then we're also going to have drag. All right, so these are the 4 forces of flight, and we're going to go over each of them individually and talk about why they are created and how they are created. Have a fixed wing, then they're going to be created by the wing. A wing is what we call an airfoil. An airfoil is the shape of the wing. We'll take a look at that in a second. The lift is going to be applied at what we call the center of pressure. In some books, in some publications, some people will call it the center of lift, which is the same thing. I call it center of pressure, CP for short. So when you see CP or CL on a diagram, it means where the lift is applied. The lift is always going to be against the weight. We've talked about this before. If we want an object to fly in the air, then we need to create enough lift to counteract the amount of weight. Okay, this is why your car doesn't fly, or hopefully it doesn't fly. If your car flies, then it means that you created more lift than you created weight, which means that the object becomes airborne. One concept that's very important here is that when we are in straight and level flight, lift is going to be equal to weight. This is a little model airplane right here. As we fly through the air right here, if we are in level flight, then lift, the amount of lift created right here, and the amount of weight created right here are going to be the same, okay? If we have more lift than weight, then the airplane is going to be climbing. If we have more weight than lift, then the airplane is going to be descending. The same is true with our quadcopter. If our quadcopter is creating more lift, then it's going to go up. And if it's creating less lift, more weight, then it's going to go down. This diagram right here represents an airfoil. The airfoil represents the design of the wing. If we were to look at this wing from the side right here, from the edge, this is what it would look like. It would look like an airfoil. Now you notice there's a term on the bottom left right here, which is called the relative wind. I want you to imagine this airplane moving through the air, okay? Now you see the little path, the little arrow that I put down here, which is the flight path. If the airplane is moving in this direction, then the flight path is in that direction. The relative wind is going to be parallel to the flight path, but in the opposite direction. What it means is, imagine instead of this moving through the air, I want you to imagine this being fixed and the air mass actually hitting the airplane. Think about a wind tunnel. Think about this object being in the wind tunnel. Now, as the airplane technically moves through the air, but in this case it's fixed, then the wind is actually hitting it in this direction. So that's what we have. The relative wind is the equivalent of the airflow hitting the wing as the airplane would be moving through the air, but since it's fixed, then it's like being in a wind tunnel, okay? So relative wind, that's a kind of an important term. This is something that we're going to be using. We're not going to be using the flight path. Just think about the flight path being in the same path, but in the opposite direction. Another term that we have to define here is called the leading edge. The leading edge is where the airflow is going to hit the wing before it gets separated. Now, as you can tell, when the airflow is going to hit the airfoil, it's going to go on top and it's going to go at the bottom. More on that in a minute. The other part is called the trailing edge, and the trailing edge is where the airflow is going to reach again the top part of the airflow and the bottom part of the airflow are going to reach again. That's called our trailing edge. If we were to draw a line between the leading edge and the trailing edge, then we would have what we call a chord line. These terms are important. There's a reason I'm going over this, is because we're going to be defining more terms, and these terms are going to be important when we talk about the angle of attack and when we talk about stall. Speaking of angle of attack, the angle between the relative wind and the chord line is going to be our angle of attack. Now, think about this for a second. This airplane right here. This airplane is flying through the air. This is what you imagine an airplane flying through the air, looking just like this, with the path going in this direction, and this is our airplane moving. Now, in reality, what happens is the airplane can be flying through the air like this. It can also be flying through the air like this, okay, at an angle like this, or it can even be flying through the air at a steeper angle like this. That's our angle of attack. See the difference between my finger here? And imagine a line between the leading edge and the trailing edge right here. That would be our angle of attack, okay? Very important. The airplane can be flying even like this with a slightly nose down attitude. That all depends on the speed. We'll get back to that in a minute. Leading edge, trailing edge, chord line, angle of attack, and relative wind. You need to know about all of these terms. One of the reasons why we define all these terms is because the lift that you see right here, the lift is always going to be perpendicular to the relative wind. So as the airplane moves in this direction and we have the relative wind right here, okay, then our lift is going to be perpendicular to that. Now, another term that we have to introduce in here is our drag. Every time we fly through the air, we create some kind of drag. Now, the drag is going to be perpendicular to the lift in the same direction as the relative wind. If we draw a line between these two right here, then we have what we call the resultant force, which is kind of our total lift. This is the amount of lift that is created when we add the lift and the drag together. It's called resultant force. Now, in terms of lift, lift is going to be proportional to the speed of the aircraft and to the angle of attack of the airfoil. What it means is the faster we go, the more lift we create. Think about being in a commercial jet and you're about to take off. Do you take off as soon as the pilot applies full power? No, you have to wait until you have enough speed, right? The speed builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up, and then eventually the airplane takes off the ground. Well, that's exactly why, because we need to create enough lift to get that gigantic airplane off the ground to counteract the weight, then we need to have enough speed. Also, in terms of the angle of attack, the higher the angle of attack, the more lift we're going to have created. Okay, so it's a combination of the two. If we want to create more lift, we can either increase the angle of attack or we can go faster. Lift is going to be created based on two different principles. Some people will tell you three, but because this is an introduction course and because this is only related to drones, I'm only going to talk about two of them. The first one is called Newton's third law, and then the second one is called Bernoulli's principle. Let's take a look at each of those. Being outside in the car. Newton's third law says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Now, I put an airfoil right here, but I want you to imagine being outside in the car, okay, you're driving, and you put your hand outside the window, and you put your hand flat like this. What's going to happen to your hand? Not a whole lot, right? The hand is just, the airflow is going to go around your hand. Now, what happens as you start giving your hand a little bit of an angle, kind of like the angle that's in the slides right here? As you do this, then your hand is going to start to get pushed, okay? And the reason it's getting pushed is because of third law of Newton. Because what happens is we have an airflow that's getting deflected at the bottom, that's the action. And as the equal and opposite reaction, we are actually creating a force that's going to lift your hand up. That's one of the reasons why we create lift. A portion of it is due to the Newton's third law. The second part of this is called Bernoulli's principle. Now, Bernoulli's principle is very interesting. It goes around by saying that when an airflow goes through a restricting pipe, okay, it goes through a constriction pipe like we see right here. Then what's going to happen to that airflow is that the speed of the airflow is going to increase, and also what happens is that the pressure at that point right here, right in the middle, right where that construction is going to be the pressure is going to decrease. In order to picture this, I want you to think about what would you do if you have a water hose, you turn on the water, and you want the water to go further away. What do? You pinch the end of it, right? You pinch the end of the hose. And as you pinch the end of the hose, what happens is the speed increases, which means that the flow, the water, is going to go further. That's exactly what happens right here. As we restrict the airflow, the speed has to increase in order to get through that construction. Now, why is this important? It's important because if you start looking at this, look at here and look at here, look at that shape. That looks like an airfoil, right? So what it's saying right here is that if we only take the bottom airfoil, for example, if we only look at the bottom airfoil, what we have is on top of the airfoil, we have a lower pressure, and at the bottom of the airfoil, we have a higher pressure. Now you notice that the airflow gets separated right here, that little red line. It hits the leading edge of the wing, and it splits into two, and then it reaches at the end. Now, those two molecules of air, if you want, those two little pieces of air that get separated right at the tip are going to separate, and you notice that the trajectory on top of the airfoil is longer than the trajectory at the bottom of the airfoil. So in order for them to reach again at the end, they need to go faster on top. Speed increases, pressure decreases. So we have a lower pressure on top, we have a higher pressure at the bottom, and what you notice is the equivalent of what's happening is that we have these little arrows that are pushing the higher pressure at the bottom. Now, in nature, higher pressure always wants to go to lower pressure. Higher always wants to go to lower. So what happens is that the higher pressure is going to try to reach the lower pressure on top, and in the process is going to help lift that wing up in the air. Okay, and that's what creates our lift. To being in space, right? The weight is applied at The next force we want to talk about is the weight. The weight is the result of gravity. We are on Earth and we have the force of gravity that's keeping our feet on the ground as opposed to being in space, right? The weight is applied at what we call the center of gravity. Remember, lift was applied to the center of pressure, the center of lift. Weight is applied at the center of gravity. Now, it's two different points. Sometimes they'll be really close to each other, but there are two different points in space, and we'll take a look at a diagram in a second. The center of gravity is the point at which, if a string was attached, then the object would be in equilibrium. Now, let me explain this using my little model airplane here. This little airplane right here, if I were to put my finger right here at the bottom, okay, and I were to find a spot where the airplane would be in equilibrium, and unfortunately I can't do it because I'm not that good. But imagine if I had a string and it was the same thing, and I glued the string right here, and I held the string like this, and the airplane would stay in equilibrium, not falling down like this, not going up like this, but right in that spot. Then that would be my center of gravity. That's where the airplane is in equilibrium. Now, the center of gravity can be located along this axis, which is called a longitudinal axis, or it can be located around this axis right here. And there's a point right in here and right in here where the airplane is going to be in equilibrium. All right, center of gravity. Weight is always going to be pointing towards the center of the Earth. It's always going to be opposite to our lift. If the weight of the aircraft exceeds the maximum allowable weight, then the airfoil won't be able to generate enough lift to counteract the weight. Think about this again in your head. The airplane is going to have a maximum allowable amount of weight. Think about your drone. Your tiny little drone like the Mavic 2 that I have right here. That Mavic can only have so much weight before the motors are not powerful enough to create enough lift to lift it up. Okay, that's exactly what this is saying right here. So we can only generate as much lift as what the wing will produce at a certain speed, and if we go over the maximum weight, then we won't be able to create enough lift to get off the ground. That can be dangerous for a lot of reasons, as you can imagine. Thrust for a fixed wing and for a rotorcraft are going to be different. So let's take a look first at the fixed wing. And the way that it works is it's basically created by the propeller that is attached to the engine or to the motor in front of the fixed wing aircraft. The propeller itself is an airfoil. So if we were to look at the design of the propeller, it is actually shaped just like a wing, just like an airfoil. And that's what it does. It actually creates lift. Instead of being vertical lift like we do with the wing, it's creating horizontal lift in order to push the airplane forward and move enough air in order to move the airplane forward through the air and create some lift. This is a representation right here of what thrust is going to be. Thrust is going to be aligned with the axis of the airplane, the longitudinal axis of the airplane. Now in terms of rotorcraft, this is going to be a little bit different because what we have is we don't have propellers that are going in this direction, right? We only have propellers that are going in this direction and going up. So the thrust is actually going to be created by the motors right here, but they are going to be created when the airplane is banked. So let's look at it from the side right here. If the aircraft starts to bank like this forward, then that's where we're going to get our thrust. Let me show you a little diagram of this, where we have a weight and our lift right here. And what we have is one of the component of the lift, because it's bent forward, because it's tilted forward, and is our thrust right here. And then we have our vertical lift. And then also what we have as a result is the same amount of drag because we are moving through the air. Now the interesting part about this is the relationship between all of these vectors. And I put them in the same color so that it makes sense. If our vertical lift is equal to our weight, and if our thrust is equal to drag, then we have an unaccelerated level forward flight. Let's think about this again. If the vertical lift and the weight are equal, then it means that opposite forces are equal, which means that we're not climbing. We have level flight. If our thrust is the same as drag, some people might think, well, if thrust is equal to drag, then you're not moving. Well, that's not true. If thrust is equal to drag, you're moving at a constant speed, unaccelerated. If thrust is more than drag, then you're going to be in an accelerated mode. You're going to be moving forward, accelerating, going faster and faster, up until the point where thrust is going to be equal to drag. And at that point, you won't be accelerating anymore. You'll just be in a cruise flight. You'll be in unaccelerated flight. If drag is more than thrust, then that's when we start to slow down, up until the point where drag equals thrust, at which point you are moving. Now, if there is no thrust, therefore there's no drag, then you're not moving, and you're not moving forward, okay? You're stationary. Does that make sense? Very important. Make sure you wrap your head around this. First one is called parasite drag, and the second one is going to be called induced drag. Now, in the past, it was called lift-induced drag, and I still call it lift-induced drag because it is what it is. It's drag that is created when we start creating lift. If we don't create lift, then induced drag doesn't exist. Let's go back to this in a minute. Let's first take a look at parasite drag. And parasite drag is a byproduct of flying through the air. So what happens is, as the speed of the aircraft increases, then parasite drag is also going to increase. There's three different types. The first one is called form drag. It's the shape of the object. Think about a PT Cruiser versus a Ferrari. Which one do you think is going to create more drag? Think about a square, a block of wood maybe, as opposed to something round. Which one do you think is going to create more drag? That's what we call form drag. It's the shape of the object. The second one is what we call interference drag. And I call this one 1 + 1 = 3. You're going to say 1 + 1 = 3. What does that mean? It means that if we take one object, let's think about maybe this wing right here, just this wing right here, and we put this in the wind tunnel and we measure how much drag is created by this object, okay? And then we go ahead and take this fuselage right here of the airplane, the red part of the airplane, and we put that in the wind tunnel and we measure how much drag is created by this object. Then when we're done, the sum of these two objects, 1 + 1, is not going to be equal to 2. It's going to be equal to more than that. Because when we put these two objects together, we create a junction between the two objects right here. And when we create that junction, we create additional drag. Now, is it equal to 3? No, it's not. Is it equal to 2.1, 2.0, whatever it is? It's just a tiny little bit more, but the point is one object plus another object measured independently doesn't mean that the sum of the two is going to be the amount of drag that's created. It's going to be more. That's what we call interference drag. The last type of drag is called skin friction. And skin friction is related to the imperfection on the surface of the device that creates lift, so on the wing. Now imagine an airplane that is designed with rivets. The top of the wing is going to have rivets on it. It's going to have smash bugs. It's going to have paint that may be chipping away a little bit. All of this is going to create some kind of skin friction. Imagine just your skin that being perfect, like hair, for example, and here that's going to create a disturbance of the airflow. The same thing is going to be true on the aircraft. So in this case, anything that's going to be impurities, imperfections on top of the lift generating device is going to create skin friction.